Welcome to our Google Plus Hangout here on LATimes.com. We're live in the LA Times newsroom today, and we're talking about a gang gunfire that paralyzed a teenager, created a courtroom drama, and really was a test of faith for many people. And this is a story that our Houston Bureau Chief Molly Hennessy-Fiske wrote, and it appeared in Sunday and Monday's paper. And we're here with Molly and with Times producer Evan Wagstaff to discuss this story and about the long shadow of this shooting in Monrovia. Welcome, Molly and Evan.
Hi, Shelby.
Well, Molly, this is a story you've been working on for years. It's really been a passion of yours, telling the story of Davien, a young boy who was shot in Monrovia and has sort of been living with the legacy of that shooting ever since. And this is a story about faith, about justice, and kind of about coping with injury. Can you just describe what made you sort of want to really focus in depth on this case?
Well, at the time of the shooting, which was back in January of 2008, I was a Metro reporter, and I was just, covering daily, shootings that might happen or daily crime beat news. And this shooting came up, and I was reporting some of the basic details, and had heard about Davien, and went out to the hospital to talk to him after I heard his family was willing to talk to us. And after meeting with them, I told my editor, I think there's probably a bigger story, and the photographer was very interested. Barbara Davidson was very interested in following up as well, and so we made the decision to keep, staying in contact with them and not just do one short story, but to keep following them. And later on, as the case progressed, we decided to wait until after the trial to do the final stories, and so it ended up being a little bit longer than I think a lot of us had expected.
Can you tell us about the shooting and about Davien?
The shooting happened at a time when there were a good number of other gang-related shootings going on in the Monrovia-Duarte area, which also has a portion of unincorporated area there that's policed by the LA County Sheriffs. And this is what the investigators at the time were telling me, and I stayed in touch with a number of them over the years, and they kept me posted about sort of how things were progressing. The sheriffs started a task force in cooperation with Monrovia police to address the shootings, and later on there was, I believe, a gang injunction that was put in place. And in talking to the investigators, they felt like they had made a lot of headway in terms of solving cases and sort of tamping down some of the gang-related violence.
And these were gang-related violence, and also in some ways had a racial element to them, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was complicated. You have people who are in different gangs, and to different degrees. Some people who are associates, some people who are members, and there are people of different races in the gangs, but they were sort of recognized as, the Duroc Crips as being more of a black gang, Monrovia and Nuevo Barrio as being more of a Latino gang, and the violence, certainly if you look at our multimedia graphic, you can see it really well up on LATimes.com, how they have, there's a shooting where the victim is black by, Monrovia and Nuevo Barrio associates or group members, and then the next shooting would be, by Duroc Crips of the Latino folks.
How does Davien fit into this? How did he come into contact with this whole gang war?
Well, he was a bystander. He was bicycling near his church, which he'd been cleaning earlier in the day in Monrovia, and he later said he saw the guy who shot him, who was a classmate of his, who was known to be a member of Monrovia and Nuevo Barrio, a Latino guy named Jimmy Santana, and that's how he became involved. He was shot and paralyzed.
And one of the things that really runs through the story, and I think looking at some of the reader comments, one of the things that really people were struck by is how your story kind of intersperses his injury, which left him paralyzed, and his faith, which is something that is really a big part of this story. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I think his faith came into play in part because he faced this tough decision of, he'd been shot, he was still very much recovering and suffering from his injuries, and at that time, only days after he got out of the hospital, he had to decide whether to testify at a preliminary hearing and point out the guy who he believed had shot him. And he, had lived in this, grown up in this neighborhood. He was afraid of what might happen to his family, not just him, but his family as a result of the decision he made. But because he was Christian and he went to church, was very involved with his Baptist church, he felt like it would be wrong to not come forward, that especially because police were asking him, did you know this guy? That to say no would be a lie, and that would be wrong. And he had made a lot of choices along the way in how he lived his life, and he didn't want to make a bad choice.
Right, and the thing that was also really interesting about this is that, yeah, as you said, you thought you had a really compelling story. You began talking with Davien to his family, and the justice system moved much more slowly. And this, what started as something that might have been something you spent a few months on or a year on, really turned into a multi-year project. But it also, I think, became much more textured because you sort of followed him as he grew up. He really is now, he's in college. He was in just a teenager before, and also kind of his attitudes that they've changed about that. How is that just sort of following up with him for all this time?
Well, it was interesting. Yeah, his situation changed a lot, and I also saw him achieve a number of his dreams, and I think, you know, he's proud of that, of making it to college, not just making it to college, graduating from high school with his class, going to college, and developing a whole group of new goals about having a professional life, and also making it on his own, and so I think it was great to see him achieve that. But I mean, he really did it for himself, and he did it while he was at the same time staying involved in the case and following up and testifying. Okay.
Well, Evan, let's go to you. Now, you were part of the team of photographers, videographers, and producers that produced this really compelling page in which we have Molly's stories as well as some incredible multimedia. Evan, do you think you could just walk us through, first of all, kind of what we can find on these pages?
Sure, definitely, Shelby. It was a pleasure, first of all, to work with Molly's story, because you've got this story about Davien, who's so compelling and makes these choices. It's a very uplifting story. It was in part 1 and part 2, and we chose online to release both at once. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to share the page with you and show you how we laid it out. So here you see Davien's story, standing up Davien's story. Right here we decided to showcase the video real big in the center, because you get to hear from Davien, you get a tease into the kind of stuff he was going through. It's a really powerful video.
Maybe we can get back to that a little bit, Evan.
Okay.
Molly, while we're playing around with that, can you kind of describe a little bit about how this all worked? I mean, clearly, to the one stand, Davien agreed to participate in this. You guys really kind of, you and your photographer, Barbara, you kind of spent like literally years with him. And how did that work in terms of the relationship you guys had?
I think, you know, it changed over time in terms of, you know, the case was taking a long time, and so Davien was going on and living his life. So a lot of what I would end up talking to him about was what was going on in his daily life, and just sort of catching up with him. And over the course of the years as he moved from high school into college. But it was interesting to see, you know, his perspective change as he grew up.
Mm-hmm. Right. And how is he doing now? He is now in college. He is in a wheelchair, but as you say, you know, he also has really kind of actually carried out a lot of the dreams he had that you talked to him about when he was first injured.
He has, and you know, I think he sees himself as I mean, he sees the impact that he has on people. I think a lot of the people who were involved in the case were inspired by him, and I think, I mean, he you know, like he says in the video, he has this idea of recycling pain into love, of, you know, that there's a lot of people out there who have a really hard time, and that you can come out of difficult circumstances, you can, you know, feel trapped in a wheelchair, or you can see it as a pedestal, which is how he refers to it in some of his music, as a platform to do great things.
Right. And one of the things that's interesting is that the centerpiece of this, the moral question in this story, is Davien having to make this choice about whether to testify. That he had, on the one hand, concerns over the safety of his family. On the other hand, he had the concern about, you know, seeing justice done. Could you kind of describe, at the end of the day, when you were kind of with him in court, what was that like, to actually knowing kind of what was involved, kind of going and seeing him do that?
Well, it's difficult too because it's this is all happening in the context of a legal system where his case was an attempted murder case, and there were at the time about 1,800, more than 1,800 other attempted murder cases that were pending, more than 600 of them gang related in Los Angeles County. So it was this enormous system, and he was just a small part of it. And sometimes it could be really overwhelming to keep up and know what was going on with the case, what stage was it in. It was going to go to trial, and then that got postponed a couple times. So, he was trying to navigate that and also go on with his daily life. And as you can see in the story, he did move on in his life, and his focus changed. I mean, in the beginning, he was very focused on, is it the right thing to do in testifying on I don't know, and by the end of it, he was sort of, he had a horizon that was beyond that.
Right. Well, Evan, let's go back to you now. When you bring up the page again, one of the things I know that's on here is a really fascinating graphic that kind of shows the amount of violence that was going on at the time Davien was shot. That's right.
We took a look at the database that was provided by LA County Sheriff's Department. Let me show you real fast. So we've got a video titled "Tit for Tat Gang Retaliation" that plays out, that shows you some of that back and forth gang violence. Let me play that for you real fast.
On January 12, 2008, 16-year-old Davien Graham was shot in front of his church in Monrovia. The shooting came amid 2 years of Black and Latino gang violence. This graphic shows the location and date of those crimes, compressed into 30 seconds. A task force sent in to stop the gang war traced nearly 80 attacks to the conflict. In all, 8 people were killed and another 29 injured. Daviens' shooting was the 75th logged by the task force. Explore details of all the shootings at latimes.com/Davien.
Wow, that is a really amazing graphic visualization. And Molly, has the crime gang shooting problem decreased since this whole spasm of violence during Davien's time?
Well, like I mentioned before, I had stayed in touch with some of the investigators and folks who work in the area, and there are certainly still gang-related cases. I think, like I mentioned, there was a gang injunction that was put in place in the area. The task force really focused on it, and they, according to those investigators, the task force moved on to, to focus on different areas of the county. So in that sense, it has decreased, but there are still, gang problems according to the investigators.
Okay, yeah, and gang problems exist there, and as you said, one of the things that has happened as a result was this task force that kind of began to crack down and do some injunctions. Well, Evan, let's go back to you now. Why don't we try to take another look at this other video, which shows Davien's story?
Sure, let's take a look, and I really want to show it to you because it's an incredibly powerful video. Let me share that screen.
Saturday, 1/12/2008 at 16:57.
911.
Yeah, I'd like to report a drive-by shooting at the Calvary Baptist Church.
Okay, I'm getting an emergency call. 1 moment, hang on.
Hello?
Did he say
He said I just got shot. He just left home.
Okay, we're getting calls over on Peck Road near Calvary. Okay, we'll be sending the sheriff's and paramedics over there. 911, that's your emergency.
Yeah, there was a shooting on Peck Road.
See what happened?
Yeah, I kind of did, but I don't know if I want to really be involved.
911 emergency.
Yes, right here in Monrovia. Somebody shoot somebody on the side street.
Okay, did you see who did it?
Thank you, sir.
Okay. 911 emergency, can we help you?
I just saw someone got shot.
Did you see who did it?
Hey. Huh?
Did you see who did it? Did you see anybody see it?
Huh?
Hello? Did anybody see who shot him?
Someone had to see it. I can understand they were afraid. The man who just shot me is staring into the side view mirror, looking back at me. His face, I know. I went to middle school with him.
911.
Hi, my name is Beth, and I am on Peck Road in front of Calvary Church, and there's a young African-American gentleman who has been shot.
And where was he shot?
He doesn't know, but he can't move his legs.
I can't put my legs.
All right, just don't move him, okay? Don't move him. Talk to him. Talk to him. He's just passed out. Did it.
It was black on brown, brown on black. Retaliation back and forth. I think there were six shootings over just a few month period. Davien was in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong color skin.
At that time as a kid, we were getting shot at our age of 12 and 11 by Hispanic males that were older than us because we're black. Like, we were gang members and we weren't. You know, and then being that my family had involvement in some of the stuff, it's almost like this is what I'm set up to do. And then the cycle continues. I mean, when you're constantly told you're going to be a jailbird like your dad or you're going to be a crackhead like your mom, like, it makes you feel as if, dang, like, that's all I can amount to. It was a constant reminder of, I'm not going to be like everybody here. I'm not going to be another repeat. I'm not going to continue the cycle. I'm not.
The area is not, at that time, was an area you didn't stop in because of the crime activities that were going on there. I just was looking at the area and debating whether or not I should stop, or if I stopped, was I going to get harmed?
I had nightmares about getting shot since I was 12. Ever since I was little, I always felt as if something was going to happen to me. I had a feeling. And it was in front of my church. I never thought it would be in front of my church. I never in a million years thought I would get shot in front of my church.
I did for a while think about what if I had left a minute earlier than I did. I would have gone past there before he was shot. If I had left the house 5 minutes later, and he could have been dead. That's where I was supposed to be.
Wake up. He's talking to us. I'm on the 911.
I remember a light shining, and I just remember going to sleep. It sucked that I had to be in the hospital under the circumstances that I did, but it actually gave me a chance to figure out who I was. I had time to think. I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. Think. And that was the beginning of, you know, the new me, the new way of life, at least. It's like almost as if I knew what I was going to be facing, but I didn't know. Then I woke up at Huntington Memorial, and I wrote the words, I forgive them.
And that's all I could do, is keep moving forward from my life and what I need to do to keep my life going.
Well, I come from a city where people don't talk. People are afraid of retaliation. You know, people are afraid of being harassed by gang members. But in court, I'm not going to be afraid. That's not how I want to live.
I won't spend a second of my time thinking about him coming to hurt me. You know, I don't have anything against him. Even though he shot me, it's difficult to see another young man face a long time behind bars for the rest of his life. Like,
he's affected by the same things I was affected by. Like, I know this is weird, but it's almost like we're all brothers. We all live in the same crummy apartments. We all live in the same crummy houses. We all live in the same dirty part of the city by the sewers and the washes. I refuse to not care because they're not black. You have to recycle pain. You have to recycle pain and turn it into love, you know? If I was going to be in a wheelchair, I wanted to be the best guy at it.
He made a choice to continue to live his life. He is going to do what he was meant to do, regardless of whether he can walk or he's got to roll from place to place. You can either choose to live your life, or you can choose to live in fear. What kind of life is it to live in fear?
Wow, Molly, that's really impressive and amazing. Just you sort of see Davien as a young young teenager and then really as a man now. And it does sound like, were you struck by his attitudes about his shooter and about kind of the way he viewed the kind of gang violence there? He's pretty forgiving.
Yeah, and kudos on that video goes to Arkasha Stevenson, who spent time with Davien and also Beth, the 911 caller, and talked to them and put that together on her own. I think in terms of Davien's attitude, he talked a lot about, like he did in the video, about not wanting to get caught up in racism and also not wanting to get locked into this cycle of anger, of being so angry at this person that he can't let go and move on with his life. I think there was one point where he had a conversation with a detective he had really grown to trust, and he said, you know, I'm the one testifying, so it's all on me if this, you know, kid goes to prison. And the detective said, no, you're, you know, holding him accountable for something that he did. You know, it wasn't your decision, you know, to do that. That was his decision. But obviously, like he says in the video, he struggled with that, but in a very thoughtful way.
Okay. Well, Molly, thank you so much for coming in and describing this. And Evan, what is the quickest way for someone who wants to read this to find it?
You can find it at www.latimes.com/Davien, Davien.
Okay, well, Evan and Molly, congratulations. Molly, this was a really incredible reporting effort by you over multiple years and many trips from Houston to LA, but it's there now for everyone to read and over the next few days, and we'll sort of see how as people react. The comments also are just really moving. Some of the people have really seen him kind of as an inspiration. Well, thank you guys for coming in. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.